keyboard to the boardroom. This is the Business of Esports podcast.
The fastest growing entertainment phenomenon of this generation.
I, Prophet of Esports, joined today by my friend and co-host William Collis.
Yeah, we got the book of esports out. It's a big deal.
So everyone knows me as the Prophet and William as the Professor.
You may call me the Prophet, but in my life outside of the business of esports, I have worked on the investment side of the table for the better part of the last 2 decades. The single fastest growing area of gaming and esports is gambling. It's booming right now. You don't need to be a prophet like me to see that. However, as an investor, I've stayed away from gambling and betting companies because of the reputational risk and often shady nature of the companies involved. This was true until now. I've recently bought stock in a new public company called Esports Entertainment Group, or EEG, which is focused on esports and gambling. The big difference that changed my mind is that EEG is a public company, NASDAQ listed, and fully regulated, focused on esports betting. The regulatory and audit requirements of a public company are key in my mind to provide the needed transparency for players, bettors, and investors. I had an opportunity to host the CEO of EEG on this podcast a couple of months ago, and I was very impressed by his vision for the company. We've stayed in touch, and I'm delighted to announce that they've accepted to become a sponsor of the podcast. If you're a family office, institutional investor, or investor of any kind, really, Esports Entertainment Group, ticker symbol GAMBLE, GMBL, might be one of the best ways to get exposure to the esports betting space and gaming in general. Make sure to check them out at esportsentertainmentgroup.com. Having said that, I need to make sure to state that this is only my opinion. I'm not an investment advisor or selling stock in the company. Please make sure you do your own research and seek advice from a licensed professional if you're looking to invest in the field. From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports podcast. I'm Paul Doalibi. I'm joined today by my friend and co-host, William Collis. For those of you who are new to the podcast, welcome to the official podcast of esports. What we do here is we cover the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week, but we look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. We dissect, we analyze the business implications of everything happening in the industry. For our regular listeners, thank you guys for tuning in every week. Thank you for listening. Thank you for telling your friends about the podcast. If you haven't already, leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to this podcast. Tell your friends about it. Spread the word. This is how the podcast has grown, and we really appreciate it. I will say, new this week, you have to go buy some Business of Esports merchandise too. Even if you buy a Team Professor shirt, that's okay. You know, my ego is big, but it's not so big that I'm still okay if you go buy a Team Professor shirt and you want to have William's beautiful mug on your chest all day long.
The merchandise is so good. I'm telling you guys, I could get the merchandise for free, and I bought $200 worth of socks. They're amazing.
He did. I can confirm.
I literally.
I don't know why, because I could have just sent it to you.
you gotta support the business, Paul. That's the way. But no, I legitimately think the merchandise we have is great. I literally think it's great. And if you haven't checked it out, you should check it out. It's fun. It's topical. It's us. It's everything that you want to show your affiliation to esports and gaming, and insightful, erudite commentary by yours truly. So yeah,
the socks are definitely cool. I will say those have been, in the first few days, by far the bestseller, William. But we have all kinds of stuff. We have a Gamers Against Aim Assist shirt. We have the basic Business of Esports logo, hoodies, shirts, the whole bit. So go check out. You can find it at thebusinessofesports.com. You just click on shop, or you can go directly to businessofesports.shop. William, we have a guest this week who I would say maybe one of I would say one of the OGs of the business of esports, right? It's been now it's been 75 episodes since we've had this person on the podcast. Okay, so he was one of, and I apologize in advance because I'm sure in our early days we were not the slick, refined operation we are today. But
I know to be fair, like you say that jokingly, but we have gotten so much better.
Oh yeah, for sure, no question.
Yeah. Like,
but I joke. But this person now joins the very exclusive 2-time guest club. I think only 2 or 3 people in that club now. 3 people now, including
there's
and it is the one and only Neil Duffy, Chief Commercial Officer, Collegiate Star League, Esports expert, personality extraordinaire. You've probably seen him everywhere now. Welcome, Neil, back to the podcast. It's so cool to have you.
Thank you, Paul. I am thrilled to be back, and I am embarrassed to say that I was on your merch shop the other day, and I had to stop because I didn't know whether I was Team Profit or Team Professor. But at the end of this call, I will disclose my allegiance, and I will go and purchase the shirt immediately after that.
Neil, you can buy both. You don't have to pick. That's the beauty of voting with dollars. You can play both sides.
That's an excellent point. I appreciate that, and maybe I will. Let's see how this goes.
I will say, I did promise to report whose shirt was outselling who. And let me preface this by saying it's early days here, okay? We're not, this race is not over, all right? But 4 days in, or three days in now, 3 days in, William's beating me, guys. Team Professor is winning by 2 shirts here, okay? So all the Team Profit fans out there, shame on you guys for not going and just buying all the shirts immediately, right? I'm gonna go total guilt trip here, William. I'm no shame.
You should. Like the podcast is gonna get shut down. Like you need to go buy Team. Doesn't even matter. You vote, guys. I said to Paul, I said the downside of doing these shirts is what if mine sells more, and it is very close to that dark reality. Don't let it happen.
Don't let it. And to be fair, I said.
I've got some insight here. I think maybe the reason the Professor shirts are winning is a lot of the esports executives, a lot of the people that you guys have to talk about week over week, they don't even understand profit, let alone. I say that jokingly, but if you're, I'm going to stop right there before I dig a hole. But,
that was savage, Neil.
Savage. I love it.
We got to come on. We got to come out with it swinging the big stick out here today. So we're hitting.
I should have put a definition underneath in small, right? That may be my mistake. Next version, we'll have a definition.
You could have done revenues minus costs, asterisks. Costs are not revenues.
And I'm not throwing stones without being guilty of this too. I ran an amateur tournament platform for many years, and that business is a very challenging one. So, maybe I've got to go buy a Professor shirt for myself too.
Can you imagine though if like there was a news article like tomorrow, like esports industry thrown for loop when companies realize subtracting negatives not appropriate method of handling like cost basis items. That was funnier in my head, but it was still pretty funny.
I like this idea that the shirt is just too avant-garde for the industry at the moment. And why I'm being beat by the Professor here. But I have faith, Team Profit. I have faith we're going to mount a comeback here and win before the year is out, right?
No,
I think we have to.
The bigger risk is that the limited edition shirts sell out because like it's only been a couple days. I think they've sold really, really well. So actually the bigger risk is you don't actually get it because I don't think we're ever going to print these again. We're never going to go back. So if you're listening to this and you're wondering, I don't expect they'll be with us through the new year. So like if you do want to pick a side now. And Paul did, I believe, engineer it so we had more Team Profit shirts printed than Team Professor, right? So you'll win by default in a sellout situation. Is that true?
Make sure there's one extra shirt in the case of a tiebreaker.
No, I'm kidding. He didn't do that. But all right,
guys, look, let's and Neil, for those of you who maybe haven't gone back to episode 35, maybe you could give us the 2 minutes on your background and what you're up to these days, sort of a year and a half later after originally being on the podcast, just for our listeners who maybe haven't gone back that far.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm so happy to be here. When we filmed live, from Midtown Manhattan a few years ago. We were together. It was a different world. I was getting ready to go attend the Fortnite World Cup, and what a great event that was. But yeah, in the last year and a half, our business of the Collegiate Star League has been thriving. We've grown now to be on 1,800 campuses. We've got over 85,000 students that have played in 15 different titles. So it's been incredible growth. Collegiate Esports, as much as I would love to say, it's a lot of our strategy and vision and just executing. The industry has finally caught up. The opportunity for students on campus to participate, whether that's social, casually, or competitively through our leagues, has just exploded. And we're so thrilled to provide those opportunities. And most recently, as of June 2020, we actually sold the business into a bigger company called Playfly Sports, which is a multimedia rights holder for traditional collegiate athletics. So they own the rights to schools like Louisiana State, LSU, your reigning football champions, Maryland, Virginia, Old Dominion, University of Denver. So a bunch of great schools, and they're also in the high school athletic realm. They did a simultaneous transaction acquiring CSL and also Outfront Sports Media. So definitely a bit of a different vision, a different path forward. We want to be the destination of choice to empower students through great gaming and educational experiences.
Very cool. I mean, congrats first of all on the exit. That's that's a huge thing in this industry. That's nice to have these and nice to see that they happen. But I'm curious, like, what has changed? You feel most in that space, in the college esports space, in the last sort of year and a half since you've been on? Like, what is the one thing that sticks out for you?
Well, I think now you can see enrollment has dropped year over year for each of the past 2 or 3 years. So being a destination, being a school where students want to attend is a really important thing. And a lot of the schools now have invested in their program, invested in athletic directors or esports directors, and they use it as much as a marketing vehicle to promote the school and promote what they've got going on from an academic perspective as much as they do in athletic. And when I say athletic, I include esports in that. But you want to have the competition side, which is growing the club program or the varsity program, but then also being a cool school that can separate themselves. How do you determine between, school A or school B? If you're a student that's emerging and you're passionate about, Minecraft or other Fortnite, different games, League of Legends, and you're choosing between school A that doesn't have an esports program and school B that does, is you're going to want to go to a school that you're going to be accepted, is inclusive of your passions. And a lot of the times people are making choices on that. And then the second thing I'll say is in the last 3, 4, 5 years, we've gone from having a handful of schools that offer scholarships and financial aid for esports athletes to now there's over 250. And I think that's really helped catapult, collegiate esports and now scholastic esports too, from the high school side, into the front of people's minds.
Would you say we've got over the education hurdle? And not education here in the sense of the industry, but like having to explain to schools, here's why you need this, here's why you should be doing this, here's why you should be thinking about it, or even simpler, like this is what esports is. Like, are we past that now or not yet?
Not even close. I think schools now have heard the term esports, but I think they don't fully understand it. And I think that there's a great place for companies like ours to go in and partner with them and educate, and then build everything up from helping them launch a club program to helping them launch their scholarship program, helping them build an on-campus arena, helping use the book of esports as that foundational piece as we build out esports curriculum for them. And all of that is still, it's going to take a couple of years to get there. I know William's a great professor, and there's probably a couple dozen programs out there offering degrees or diplomas with esports courses, but still you'd be amazed at the times we sit down with athletic directors or associate athletic directors or even some provosts and presidents, and they simply say, what are we talking about? And you got to start at square one. But I'm okay to do that. We're young enough that it's going to be a long term endeavor for us, and I'd rather build programs the right way from day one instead of having them come in, with some people that maybe don't have the best intentions for the students. They're looking to make a quick buck, and let's get those bad actors out of the space, and then let's have the programs that are going to be there to support them and say, hey, listen, year one we're probably going to lose money. Year two we might lose money. Year 3, we're going to break even, and year 4, we might see some profitability, but it's going to be nominal compared to football or basketball. Think of it more in line with something like fencing or some of these other sports that maybe cover their cost and make a little bit of revenue, but it's going to take time. But we're certainly not there with the academic side and people knowing what they're trying to achieve. And we're slowly getting there with brands and partners and sponsors, but certainly a different world than when we spoke 75 weeks ago.
I will say it's kind of a plug, but I am proud of it that I teach at St. Peter's, and I think they are one of the schools that really does get it and sort of understands how it all fits. So there are some out there, but for sure there's so many hundreds or thousands of schools that need a Collegiate Star League sort of to be able to navigate their way, just because they don't have the know-how. They just don't have the knowledge. They don't have the experience. They don't have the resources. It's one of those things where my advice always has been, don't go it alone. Just trying to navigate this by yourself as a school, it's kind of a recipe for disaster, I feel like.
You're exactly right, Paul. This is when I got into space, 7 years ago, I tried to build a collegiate network by myself, for 6 or 8 months. And most people will get on your show and talk about how great they are and all the great things that they did or are doing. And for me, for 6 or 8 months, I worked really hard, but at all of the wrong things. And then it came to early 2015, and I went to our leadership and I said, okay, listen, I can't go this alone. We need to either build, borrow, or buy if we're going to be relevant in this space. And we went the route of, we went out and bought the Star League, but this is a full out arms race right now, and we all need to partner up and hold hands and build this industry together, because some people feel like it's late, but it's still so early, and we're still really laying those foundational bricks to what this industry is going to become.
Guys, look, I want to jump into some topics here. I feel like we can't avoid starting with this. Like, it's one of those things where I kind of wish we could, but we can't, and that is Cyberpunk, right? Like,
wait, you wish we couldn't talk about Cyberpunk?
Yes,
like
yes, yes. I wish we could avoid this. To be honest,
I was looking forward all week to talk about Cyberpunk. I have so much to say here. So,
just because I know you and I are going to disagree, William, I think, right? So, I was, afraid of this battle. I don't know whose side Neil is going to take either, right?
Break the ties. It can be Neil the Judge Duffy comes in to adjudicate the disagreement.
Okay, let me just give you the two articles that I saw showing sort of the two sides of the story, right? The first one was from techradar.com, and the headline here was Cyberpunk 2077 blows away Steam record as tons of gamers rush to play at launch. A new record was set for simultaneous players of a single player game. And they had the previous record was 472,000. The peak players in this case reached over 1 million, to be precise, 1,03,264. Dota had recorded more, but that's not a single player game. So Cyberpunk 2077 now has the record for the most concurrent players for a single player game on Steam, over 1 million. That was one article. Juxtaposed with a second, this is from WeGotThisCovered.com. Furious gamers cause Cyberbug 2077 to trend on Twitter. And this one, I don't think I need to explain that. A lot of people complaining about the bugs, the issues with the game. In conjunction with that, I don't have this up, but CD Projekt Red's stock price has tumbled since we did the podcast last week, and we weren't sure how things were going to shake out. About 30%. This is a huge drop in the stock since the release of the game.
And this is where I kind of want to jump in and stress, look, we're a business podcast, right? So we're not really in the business of game reviews, and we're not trying to be games journalists, right? Like, this is not like new Call of Duty. Let's talk about if the multiplayer is any good. But this is actually really significant to our industry. This is probably the biggest news story, because as a refresher, CD Projekt Red's market cap put it as larger than Ubisoft, right? So this was one of essentially the 5 biggest games publishers in the world, and they'd only ever had one series of games, 3 games basically. Now there's more to their business. They have
Well,
Gold
and they
Games,
hadn't
Rogue, and
released
other.
a new
Yeah,
game since in the last 6 years.
yeah. So just to clarify, we are talking about this because this has massive ramifications for the industry. This was probably the only top 5 publisher on what I would call the bake it till the cake is ready model. Everyone else has moved off. Arguably, maybe Take Two had not, right? Like, but even then, they have studios that are on a, the cake is it's your birthday, have it every year model, right?
Yep.
This was the last one, and this launch hasn't been what they'd hoped. I think we're going to talk about exactly what went wrong with it, but not what they thought they deserved, I think. Paul, before I go into my whole thing, and Neil, because I have a bunch of thoughts, I want you guys to go first here so that I can just attack. But
No, Neil, I'm curious.
Go.
I'm curious your thoughts in terms of because have you played the game? Let's start with that. Have you had a chance to play it?
I haven't. I've got my PS5 at home, but I haven't had a lot of time to play games in the last couple of weeks. But incredibly disappointing. We were waiting for this. God, what was it? 10 years.
7 years.
It feels like 10 years. But 7 years, so long, and they push it back and push it back, and everyone's so hyped. And I still remember, everybody getting ready at 7 o'clock Eastern. We're gonna play. Let's do this. And I tuned in. I watched a bit of it on Twitch of some of the gameplay, and they had all of the opportunity to have this be one of the best game launches of all time. And if it just wasn't ready, if it was too buggy, the audience still would have been there in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. It's unfortunate to see, and they must, in their testing, they must have been able to predict some of this. Having 1 million concurrents, man, what a big number, and what a big miss. So disappointed to see. Doesn't mean that there can't be an epic comeback here, but I think out the gate they've really stumbled.
Do you think it was so overhyped that there was no chance that this was going to succeed? I mean, that was part of my thesis, a few months ago, which is there's just so much hype, even if it's a great game, like an amazing game. Like people were talking about this literally like it's the second coming of Christ. I mean, like this was gonna, change gaming forever. It was Stadia level marketing kind of fluff.
I'm not going down that rabbit hole with you talking Stadia. I know where you stand on that, but I think you might be right, and I think there is some credence to what you say that it was almost too big to fail, and the amount of dissenters in gaming naturally we're going to pick this thing apart. But that it wasn't fully baked, that it wasn't fully ready. You got to place blame on both sides here. As I mentioned, they must have known that there was going to be some serious fallout of the game not being equipped, and then the gamers now, everybody's piling on each other and lining up. I just read a report that good luck getting your refunds. They're lining up for refunds, saying that they weren't the bill of goods that they were sold wasn't what is actually represented.
I mean, that's a whole other rabbit hole. And William, I mean, we've sort of touched this before. The game refund thing is a whole other sort of business conversation to be had. Like, how legitimate, like if you've played it for an hour and you don't like it, right? Should you be able to return it? Should you be able to get your money back? How do you police this with such a digital product like this? I think it's going to be a mess. Look, William, let me address sort of your points for a second, which is, everyone has been complaining about fundamentally some of the same things, right? A lot of the complaints are, it doesn't look as good as it was promised running on like old hardware, right? If I'm running it on my Xbox One or my PS4, right? For that, those complainers, like, I have no sympathy. I'm like,
for those guys, I'm like, what did you expect? Like, did you think the PS4 would turn into a PS5 when you put the Cyberpunk seat? And granted, to be fair, it does look really under optimized for the old consoles. So actually, like, I'm being flippant there. There's a really legitimate complaint. It looks
fair.
like
So there was some greed on their part, right? They could have made this a next gen exclusive and avoided a lot of these problems.
Knew that this was the last holiday season. Last generation consoles had a hurrah. It had to be in market now. It wasn't an option. But it was not ready to be out. I really, from everybody I've talked to, I played it on a PC. I had a very different experience, which we'll talk about in a second. But for my friends who did play it on last gen hardware, it was not ready to ship on last gen hardware. That's pretty clear.
Yeah, and look, I have the best PC money can buy, right? So like ran perfectly fine on my 3090s and SLI, right? Like there were I was getting 200 frames per second with everything on and RTX
Although
on and the whole bit. Like,
your computer does get really hot running Cyberpunk, by the way. I don't know if you've noticed. It's the hottest I've ever seen.
no, you need custom water cooling the whole bit, William. Come on.
Okay.
No, but so those arguments I sort of ignored, right? Even though I understand and they may have a point and they may have a legitimate reason to return the game or be upset, but fundamentally, for me, what was the problem, and this is subjective, is the game A, felt unfinished from a story perspective, and B, was just boring. It was boring. It's the first game, I will say, I've ever fallen asleep while playing it. I literally fell asleep in my chair. there's after the first major mission, the heist, there's like literally a 45-minute cutscene, and I don't watch a lot of movies because I fall asleep. This was like watching a movie, and half an hour in, I just fell asleep.
So to be very fair, so let me not put my cards on the table. So I am now 14.5 hours into Cyberpunk. So nowhere near a ton of time, but like I just checked Steam so I can confirm. Like I played it for a bit now. I would say like this is the point where if this were a Call of Duty release, I'd be about to finish the campaign, right? Like I'd be coming up on. So I think I quite like the game. I'm actually going to come out and say I think it is a perfectly good game. I don't know what people were expecting, but it's Skyrim in 2077. Like
no. See, this is the problem. The problem is misrepresentation. They promised an open world RPG. There's no RPG elements to this at all. Zero. Your ability to customize your character is so basic, right? And all of the story, all of the missions that drive the main storyline are on rails, right? The choices you make lead fundamentally to one of 5 different endings that all lead to the same ending. And so this is not an RPG. It's not truly open world. It's not truly free. Like, I think the overarching theme here is they made promises that they just didn't deliver on. Technical ones, story ones, content ones, and it to me, this is classic business mistake, right? Under promise and over deliver. And here they over promised and under delivered, and this is the reaction you're going to get. I'm not surprised.
Well, to me, I see. So getting inside of game review territory again, but I will say if I were reviewing this game, I would give it like an 8.5 out of 10. I quite like it, right? But getting out of game review territory, right? By the way, I'll say why I like it. Just one thing. I think the ambiance is amazing. Like I'm somebody who enjoys things for the feeling that the mise en place, I guess you would say. I don't know if you're in a restaurant.
And there's nothing that took you out of that? Like the cops that just teleport behind you magically,
I'm as a sort of gamer, I'm okay to go along with their vision, right? So like, I'm not actively, if the cutscene wants me to walk forward, I'm not like, I'm walking over it. Like I walk forward, right? Like that's like, I want to be told the story, and I am playing the way I think CD Projekt Red intended you to play. Like I am like trying to make it work, right? So, but I do think as a realization of a setting, it is excellent. Night City is a really great place. I like it. I really like it. I enjoy, in the same way I enjoyed spending time in Breath of the Wild and wandering around the mountains, I enjoy wandering around Night City. Okay, game review time over. Let's done. Business implications here. 2 major takeaways that I have here. One, guys, this is the last time you ever trust a game in development for 7 years. Like, please understand. If you didn't understand, if like this didn't sink in before, like, it is never a good reason for a game to take 7. There's no like, oh, let's just put one more layer on this cake. Like, if a game's in development for 7 years, stuff isn't working out, right? And I think more to the point, there's a real problem, a fundamental theoretical problem with a 7-year development cycle. And it is this. It is that if you develop a game for 7 years, when the target moves, when you start, right, when you start making the game, there's games look a certain way. There have been so many innovations, so many features, all these things. 7 years later, a ton of other smart people in the industry have had a ton of really good ideas that you could have incorporated had you started development 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But you are now shooting a bullet from a gun that was fired 7 years ago. The target moves, right? And I really feel Cyberpunk is guilty of that, is that their systems would have been totally sweet in 2014. We've seen better systems now. We've seen stronger and more improved ways of dealing with character creation. Sliders, when this game was developed, I guarantee you sliders were hot. Sliders were the way to go. Sliders now, we are so past that as an industry, right? The RPG mechanics, I guarantee when the game was developed, standardized tech trees and that were the way to go. Now we're past that. We have more dynamic and responsive leveling up and other, like, it's just the industry's moved past it. So that's one, like, just 7 years. The second thing is, because the game was in development for 7 years, the publisher had to invest into the hype, right? Because they're a public company, they had to market it, and they clearly leaned into the mythos of this is amazing. And the reality is, like, look, like, the game is a good game. I'd even give it a 9 out of 10. I really like it. I'm having fun with it. Many other publishers, every other publishers publish 9 out of 10 games for me every 6 to 8 months, right? Happens all the time. You can't spend 7 years on it. And quite why people thought like this game was going to be so unbelievable or what, like, it's just expectations very rarely match reality in the game industry. It's the opposite. The titles that are the perennial classics are the ones nobody was watching. Think of BioShock. That was on exactly 0 people's radar before Ken Levine dropped that, right? I mean, I'm exaggerating, but the point is, like, the hype in the industry in general, that the games do not follow it. And I think as an investor or as a business person looking at the space, do not invest into the hype. And we even had other people on this podcast pre-launch calling the CDPR stock was going to decline 30% or something. And that's exactly what it did. I think it was on the live stream. We actually had somebody say that. It's exactly what it did. It's the trend that it follows post-major release. And again, had they been reasonable in this, the greatest selling Steam game of all time, the most number of concurrent players, in another universe, this is a smash hit. For almost any publisher anywhere, this blows away every expectation and then some. But this is the risk of, as you, Paul, said, under promise and over deliver. And this is the risk of an empty product line and a company needing to continually lever themselves against a future outcome, right?
I mean, I just want to put some numbers on this, William. They sold $500 million worth of the game, right?
Wow.
Like, this is not a small number. And so even if no one buys another copy ever, you could still call this a success, right? And the stock did drop 30%. I called 15. I didn't think it would be this bad. But we still called. Neil, I'm curious, are we being too hard on this? Like, from a business standpoint, from a pure numbers standpoint, right? Is the stock drop of 30% completely irrational when you think they sold $500 million of the game?
Well, I think the 500 million is an impressive number. I think the million concurrent is an impressive number. But I think the expectation that we set is, how do we get the players through the gate and how do we keep them? And if the players are lined up for refunds and they're not sticking, after 3, 4, 5, 10 hours in the game, I think the fundamentals of the business might indicate that it's going to be a very good release. But the credence and really the credibility here of the business, if you are a top 5 publisher, you want to deliver great gaming experiences to the people that are loyal to you. And if people are upset, and frankly, people are pissed about this game, and I hear you, William, with your 9 out of 10, and I love that that's what you're giving it, but that's not what we're hearing in the marketplace is people are giving it a much harsher review than that. So I don't think we're being overly harsh. I think we've got to take a look at ourselves.
Let me ask this. Sorry, are investors baking in the fact that because this has soured people on CD Projekt Red, the next game is not going to be nearly as exciting, right? Is this why the stock dropped 30%? Are investors sort of, if we assume they're perfectly smart and perfectly rational, right? Is this what they're baking in here?
I don't think so. I think what they're doing is let's extrapolate that chart out to 1 year or 5 years or even 3 years. And I'm pretty sure it's up pretty significant. Let's keep in mind too, we're middle of December. People are probably taking profits, and
It's true.
Yeah.
I think investors are probably thinking, and the same thing happened with Activision with their first battle royale. Is everybody came out and said Fortnite. This is going to be massive, and Call of Duty is going to supplant that. And the first one was, just mediocre. It didn't gain the reputation. I think they were around 80 at the time, and came down to high 60s or even maybe low 60s. And then what they got right was this year with Warzone, exactly what investors wanted 12 or 18 months ago. So that's why I don't fully count the CD Projekt Red out yet. Is what can they do to tweak this to enhance the game? How can they they've already got the people through the gate. How can they keep some of them and then come back with an enhanced product that maybe gets them to buy additional products, or how can they make this a better release moving forward? But if I'm an investor and I see those numbers, I'm not overly upset.
Yeah, I will say though, like, look, if you assume an average publisher the size of, say, Ubisoft releases extremely conservatively 3 games a year, and that is way underestimating it, right? Extremely conservatively 3 games a year, right? Divide 500 by 7 times 3, right? Because that's sort of the math you have to do to justify this stock price. That means the title sold like 25 million effectively on so I do think that. Now, that being said, like, I also think part of the story that was being told around CDPR was monetizing through an online mode and other things, and games that we have seen with this. There's only really one proxy, maybe 2 proxies for a game with this long of a development cycle, right? World of Warcraft, Grand Theft Auto. Both of those have proven to add money to their investors through recurring payments in a rich online mode. That's the only way to do it. And I think the real challenge with this is it's not the initial sales. It's everybody thought the online piece that was coming after would kind of complete the couplet, if you will. And now I think the goodwill is not where it needed to be. That's damaged. And that's a part of the story too. But all of this is me saying, I really like the game. Like, if I could talk to the CD Projekt Red guys, I'd say you guys did an awesome job. Like, I think it's an amazing game. I just think that the problem is when you launch one game every 7 years, amazing isn't good enough. And I think that should be a lesson for why every other publisher has converted to a much higher cadence business model.
So would either of you buy the dip? The stock's down 30%. Would you buy it now?
I just looked at the chart, the 5-year chart. It's gone from 22 to 300. The 1-year chart's gone from 260 to 300. So would I buy the dip? Not necessarily, because I don't know what's coming down the funnel. I don't know what the next release is. I don't know what.
Have you lost faith in the next release, right? Potentially.
Not necessarily. I think they're going to probably overcompensate for putting out a product that wasn't fully complete. And so I think they know that they can't have a misstep again. I wouldn't buy the dip. I would watch it though, put it on the watch list. And if it comes down significantly more, then maybe have to get in and explore that a little bit. But like we talked about a little bit before we even got on air, is anything in the space right now, it's really hard to lose. So take our knowledge for what it's worth. But if you're buying anything right now, you're probably going to go up.
That's a very good point. Is just like, you should probably put money in games. You'll be fine. Like, particularly if you're investing over any more than like a 6-month horizon, like, like the sector is winning right now. You'll be just fine.
I just want to leave our listeners with 2 thoughts before we move on. One, this was like the perfect example for me of games not always needing to be the medium of choice, right? This to me was CD Projekt Red are clearly phenomenal artists, creative people, right? Great storytelling. These are the strengths. But if for those who played the game, there's a sequence in the beginning after essentially you get offed, or and you're sort of rebuilding your life, and it takes you through that. And what I heard, one of the disgruntled devs leaked that was originally all supposed to be gameplay, like you coming back and sort of making, like, rebuilding your name and your friendship and all these things that they went through in like a cutscene. All of that was originally supposed to be gameplay that they removed because they didn't have time, right? And they chose to just show it as a cutscene. But it made me feel like this whole game would have been better off as a great 2.5-hour movie, starring Keanu Reeves and great storytelling, and there was really no need to have a human being pressing spacebar every 10 or 15 minutes, right?
Oh,
Moving dialogue along.
I have to tell you, I think that about so many games. Like literally a great example of that is any game Hideo Kojima has ever made. I'm sorry, I love Hideo Kojima. I played Death Stranding. I want the Death Stranding 2-hour cutscene. Like
yeah, like give me this. I want to know the Cyberpunk story, but I don't want to have to sit here pressing spacebar for like 20 more hours.
It's because you have to choose the story for the medium. And I definitely get the sense that the more passionate people get about their stories, the more they want the story to be directed to experience the best moments that the developers have showcased and set up. And as a result of that, you lose the interactivity that makes games special. That's why, ironically, I think the best storytelling done in games is like Bloodborne, games with effectively no story that just invite through ambiance and player deduction, because that at least fits with the way you play the game. It's asking you as a consumer to actively do something. And it is true that Cyberpunk is literally like, I've played it with my wife. We had a great time playing it. We played it like a movie. Like I will get to a story mission and I'll tell her, oh, it's a story mission. We can watch it for 45 minutes together. I'm not kidding. I've said that to her and we've watched it. Like,
why I fell asleep, because I didn't have to press the space bar for 20 minutes.
It's the only PC game I've ever played with a controller, because I hooked it up to my TV and I just hit the A button. Like, oh, what's he going to say next? This is pretty cool.
So this is my first thought, right? No, which is like, it doesn't always have to be a game. As much as we love the gaming industry, like this to me didn't have to be a game. The second thing was timing here. And timing, probably one of the most important things in business. This really truly felt like it was all driven by, and I would say maybe if I had to guess, this was in their heads even 2 or 3 years ago, that they wanted to time this in line with the in-between of the console cycles, so that they could sell essentially twice as many copies of the game, right? This felt truly timed very purposely to release when they knew they could sell PS4 and PS5 copies, when they could sell Xbox One and Xbox Series X copies. And I have to admire that business decision, because, profit is good. But I feel like they weren't ready for that decision, right? Clearly they weren't ready for that decision, but that decision seems to, I would guess, have been made early on in the process. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I get it. Is corporately, like, you can't miss the holiday season. Not when next holiday season PS5 and Xbox are widely available and you've optimized, you've spent all this time on last gen. Like, I get it. I understand why the business decision was made. And normally I take the opposite view. I'm like, they should have left it in development longer. This is a case, it was 7 years. You really cannot say should have left it in development longer. It's the opposite, and I'm not trying to point fault. I think it's a great game. I just think the lesson is, guys, for the industry, don't invest into hype. And any game in development for over 5 years. By the way, same thing about what's that game that Star Citizen or whatever? Like, I'm telling you guys right now, if you're on the Star Citizen hype bandwagon, I am so sorry to tell you this. You are in for your own Cyberpunk moment. And it's nothing against Chris Taylor or the amazing team that they put together. It's things that get this anticipated with this much dev time. That's not how great games are built today. They're built on faster cycles, quicker turnaround side, and learning from others, all of which is difficult to build in to these ultra long range projects. So,
guys, I want to move on. Sorry, go ahead, Neil. Last word on this.
I was going to say very quickly, I think the timing was serendipitous for these guys. Is with everybody, all eyes on gaming, the hype around PS5 and the new Xbox at unbelievable levels. Is I would love to sit and think that they sat in a boardroom 3 years ago and said, we're going to drop right around this time. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. If they did, I respect them even more. But I don't know if their tactics were necessarily unscrupulous, but they definitely took advantage of this moment in time, and hopefully that reflects in their financials, and hopefully they can give back to the community by enhancing the game as we move forward.
I think they will. I think it's well said, and I think they are going to make an effort. Let's move on, guys. I want to talk about 2 acquisitions, and I kind of want to talk about them together. Let's compare and contrast two really big ones. The first here is from the Motley Fool, And the headline is Tencent makes another billion-dollar gaming acquisition. The Chinese technology and media conglomerate has been on an acquisition spree in the gaming space, making its leadership position even stronger. What they bought here was Leiyu Technologies, which is the parent company of Digital Extremes, and it's a Canadian-based video game studio known for Warframe. They also own studios including Athlon and Splash Damage. Tencent's going to be paying roughly $1.5 billion in cash to acquire the company, which is incredible. The buying spree that they've been on and the amount of cash that they've put out there. The second acquisition, this one, I think we talked about it on a previous podcast, and it was EA agrees to a US $1.2 billion deal for F1 video game developer Codemasters. I think when we talked about it, we were talking about it in the context of Take-Two Interactive having made an offer, and EA sort of just trumped them, came up with an offer for about $200 or $250 million more. So they were willing to pay a higher share price because Codemasters is publicly traded. And so it looks like EA is going to end up acquiring Codemasters, having outbid Take-Two Interactive, which I think at the time when we talked about it, we felt that was a big price tag, $1 billion for Codemasters, and now the looks like the trading price is going to be $1.2 billion. So curious to get your guys' thoughts. You can talk about them individually, or we can talk about sort of which one we think is the better acquisition. Neil, I don't know if you know the Warframe guys. I know it is Canadian based, Canada based, but curious to get your thoughts on these two.
My first take is, I know you guys are fans of this gentleman, but Jeff Bezos, when you look at Codemasters being bought for $1.2 billion, let's just take in consideration how amazing that Twitch purchase at $970 million was 6 years ago.
It's true.
Right? Is that not the greatest?
Such a great point
of
Neil.
all time. The
Such a
Codemasters
great
one,
point.
EA, I think, is in such a good spot, and we might say openly here that 1.2 billion is them overpaying. If you look at the stock run that they've been on too, it's a currency unto itself, and they're up probably 60-70% on the year, and adding more AAA titles to their arsenal is all the better. I think they've just done a tremendous job, and sim racing and F1, especially with what we saw as a result of that Netflix series Drive to Survive, I think it is.
Yeah.
F1 is making a huge comeback, and it's amongst,
agreed.
Those younger audiences and people that have now seen this through Netflix, and then people that are middle-aged or mid-30s to my age, is we're all obsessed and we're following it every week, and it's quite dramatic, because I didn't care about F1 at all in the last couple of years, but I'll admit, I've in the PlayStation store, I've bought the F1 game. It's not that great in my opinion. Maybe I'm not that good at driving it, but I think the acquisition is worth the risk. You want to be known as world class when it comes to FIFA, Madden, NHL, sim racing. They've got such great titles along the way, and what the team over there, Todd Citron and his team's doing at Competitive Gaming Entertainment now, that they're just making the right moves. I don't know much about this Tencent deal, admittedly, but anything Tencent touches, it's a powerful move, and they're building an empire that we should all be very, very afraid of.
I mean, both seem like really good acquisitions from a synergy perspective, right? Because EA has all the sports titles, so F1 feels like a perfect fit, and Tencent's great at monetization, right? Probably better than anyone. And Warframe really is, it's one of these free to play, like monetize every which way up the wazoo kind of games. Like it seems to fit in the Tencent portfolio.
Both of these acquisitions, I have to tell you, like in a vacuum, I thought they were already owned by the people buying them. Like no joke. Like I literally thought Warframe was somehow, I was like, that's just the sort of thing they buy. And the same for EA. Like I literally thought, like I had played Grid quite a lot. In my memory, Grid was an EA game. Like maybe it was published by EA or something, I don't know. But like that tells you how like well, like on portfolio, on message these acquisitions are. Prices are high, but as Neil said, like the market's high. And then, to his other point as well, putting in context the Bezos acquisition, like doesn't matter what you put your money in, put it in games. Like I think anything that was bought for $1 billion a couple years ago looks smart, because there were a couple. It wasn't just Twitch. We had Minecraft bought by
Look,
Microsoft.
in a world where
How-
Roblox goes public at 30 billion or 40 billion market cap, like
Yeah.
buying Minecraft at 4 or 5 or whatever they paid, right?
Yeah,
Seems
how
like
smart
genius.
do they look? Yeah, it's just like Microsoft's like, oh, So like the bottom line is, but guys, this is why I think you should listen to this podcast. It's so important. It's just like, this is not the exception. This is the norm. Putting money in games today will turn into more money later, more likely than not. Investment advice aside, I'm not accredited, blah, blah, because the industry is just so positioned. It's the future of so much entertainment media and everything. So like, the reason we're observing these crazy exits and outcomes is because the space as a whole is growing so much, right? So like, get into the space. That's the bottom line. Yeah.
William, I'm with you on that 1,000%. And I think the interesting thing is, we that are in the industry, we talk about these things very openly and we discuss them. But from an outside portfolio manager at, a Morgan Stanley or wherever, they probably are afraid to make the wrong move because they just don't know the industry as well. So get into that, Nerd ETF by Roundhill or Hero by, HERO, whoever puts that one out. It
ESPO with the Van Eck guys.
is that what it is? Oh,
No,
Van X.
ESPO. There's another one
Oh, there's
with
another one by
the
Van X.
Van Eck. Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are the three. Link those in this chat or in the dialogue here as this gets published. Is it's still so early days, and having the ability to tap into the professor and the prophet. You don't get this in other industries where people just openly disclose all of their secrets and dirty laundry and all of the good and the bad and the ugly. I think esports is in a very unique position where I had a conversation today, and it was a matter of even 2 years ago, if I wanted to have a conversation with anybody in the space, literally anybody, it could be Ninja, it could be Steve from Team Liquid, I just reach out to them and they're likely going to get back to me. That was 2 years ago, probably not so much now, but it's still very much like that in the business sense.
Do you guys not think it's kind of insane, but also kind of amazing that, like, if this was a pure business podcast, right? Like, and I was a VC for a long time, a decade and a half, and I used to blog about the tech industry, and I used to speak about it all the time, and I get invited to conferences, and I was like always, I was the valuation guy, right? Like if I always felt if I bought right, I would end up making money as a VC, right? I didn't buy into like a lot of the froth and things like that. But I think it's just incredible that we're talking about 2 acquisitions over $1 billion, right? And valuation isn't even part of like barely part of the conversation, right?
It's normal. It's normal. And it's not even like, and this is not a knock on Codemasters. They're an amazing company. But it's not like you're buying Assassin's Creed, Call of Duty, and Sonic the Hedgehog for $1 billion. You're buying racing sims. Like, that's what you're buying. You're buying a car, and granted, huge money, but like I'm saying, like even the IP, like by that token, what must Sega be worth? What must Nintendo? And in that sense, I almost don't think the public market caps have quite caught up yet, right? Like I think maybe now with the 60% tear some of these stocks have been on, but like, it really is a situation of like, look, like everything we do is going online. Everything we do is digitizing. Entertainment is always the first to lead. It's always one of the first industries to go. Like it's no surprise. Like, man, I mean, my big regret is not giving Notch $50 back in the day for a private Minecraft server. Yeah.
Do you guys think we're going to see a sort of a war to buy up sort of the last of these independent publishers, the ones that have any scale? And they're just all going to go at sort of huge dollars. Like I'm starting to feel like there's this war that's going on now, and Microsoft's buying, Amazon's maybe thinking about buying, right? You have Tencent always buying, EA's buying, right? You've all these big players. Most of them have public stock that's now very valuable. Are we going to see more of this in your minds?
I think we have to. I think there's no doubt that this trend is going to continue through 2021. To William's point, where the eyeballs go, the money follows. We know where the eyeballs are. It's consuming Twitch or YouTube, or it's playing the games. It is. We're only getting started in the M&A space. There's so much money out there. There's so much silly money. I feel like we're back to the 2017 days where people, heard about Overwatch League and said, I'm in. Whatever the check is, I'll write it. And, I hate to speak disparagingly about the Overwatch League, but man, good luck at seeing a return on any of those initial investors, right? And I think Call of Duty League has more legs.
Yeah.
I think it's got a
Yeah.
shot at being, around for a long time. But I just feel like there's more money than there is sense out there right now. And if I was a publisher right now, I'd put the for sale sign up and say we're open for business and see what comes in.
Yep.
Yeah, but to put it in context a little, to make it seem a little less like, because I actually think there's real value being acquired here. Like, this is what it looks like to me. Imagine there was a sleepy sector of the economy. I don't know. This isn't the sleepy sector, but say government, say solar power, just hypothetical. It could be anything. It could be, ice cream. I don't know. But the solar power feels a bit more on point here because it's a tech thing. So there's been a company going around quietly buying small scale solar power tech and getting 10, 15, 20x returns for like 8 years, right? Don't you think at some point other energy companies start to notice and like, well, looks like buying those early state, those smaller solar power things is a crazy good. That's what's going on here with Tencent. They were like the only fish eating in the pond.
It's true.
And I don't even think it's like, it's not some great secret strategy or anything. It's just other people have watched the returns they've gotten and been like, oh, those look really good. What do you have to do to get them? Buy proven titles at a mid-level of scale that need help coming up the curve and benefit from a little bit of ecosystemic networking. Like, we can probably do that. Sounds like it's basically a capital efficiency investment. And that's what's going on. And it just so happens that the best acquirers to do that are people already in the games industry because of all the synergies that you've discussed. So it's like, it's not crazy. It's not like, it's a very reasonable thing because the returns have been there historically.
It just
Guys,
sounds like arbitrage, right? Like that sounds like exactly what
Yeah.
it is the bigger publishers and bigger Tencents of the world are just arbitraging all of the smaller stuff and creating an ecosystem that you can never leave.
Yep.
I think every time we talk about Tencent, we agree that they're the guys that are making all the right moves. Like it's been hard to fault them for just about anything.
Tencent's so good,
which is
so
interesting.
Good. Do I get to make the joke that they're going to change their name to 20 Cent soon? No,
no, I'm not allowing that. That you guys will never hear that. It's going to get cut from the podcast. Don't worry.
Neil laughed. Neil was laughing really
we
hard.
in fact are developing a William dad jokes filter at some point, so we don't need to edit these things out.
I'll buy that t-shirt.
They will just get edited out. Guys, if you'll allow me, one of the other areas that's on a tear right now, speaking of areas on a tear, esports betting. If you guys are looking to invest in that space, I would look at a company called Esports Entertainment Group. They're publicly traded, NASDAQ listed, fully regulated. The ticker is GMBL, Esports Entertainment Group. I'm an investor in the company. So if you're a family office, institutional investor of any kind, check them out, esportsentertainmentgroup.com. Having said that, it's just my opinion. I'm not an investment advisor. I'm not selling stock in the company. Do your own research, consult with a licensed professional if you're looking to invest in the field. Guys, let's finish on something that is kind of fun. Well, I wouldn't say fun, but this one caught my attention because I actually was surprised. This one surprised me. I'll put it that way. And the headline here is 77% of North American gamers keen to attend in-person esports events ASAP. 79% of surveyed event venues also interested in hosting competitive gaming. Okay, so here's the question for both of you, without getting into the numbers here. But is this just an article? This is from sportspromedia.com, right? I don't know what the right term is, but like when you have statistics like this, there are hidden variables, right? Is this just that a lot of people want to see other people after, a year of coronavirus? Or is this truly a statement to the demand for in-person esports events? Let's put it that way.
Neil, you got to go first. Neil, you got to.
I'm happy to. We run a live events business, and it is, we've shifted online and been very fortunate to be able to maintain through this. But, where we see great opportunities through the live events, and I think 77% are keen to attend a live event. That's a no-brainer to me. I think especially what we've seen in our communities is this is partially because they missed the engagement. They missed the opportunity to meet their online friends. They missed the opportunity to compete. They missed the opportunity to to buy that merch and try it on and see all of the different stuff that you'd see at a convention. And we just miss the normalcy of life. We are romanticizing, what it used to be. And there's no surprise to me that 77% of people can't wait to get back. We've got to do it safely. It's on, folks like us that have events companies that are going to host these live events to make sure we roll it out in the proper and appropriate way, because you can't trust people. You really can't. People are willing to put themselves in harm's way, and especially the younger people, these folks that are going to attend these events, whether it's big events, small events, people just want to get out of the house and do something different. The 79% from live event venues, that surprises me least. I think that should be 100%.
100% right.
Yeah.
Bleeding money. I feel awful for them because no one could have predicted this.
Who are the 21% who said?
Yeah, I know you could literally
no,
get like 21% of live events venues going bankrupt.
I'll tell you who they are.
79%.
Those are the same people that own esports teams that haven't looked at their P&L saying, no, we don't want to do that. So I'm just kidding. I think, those are probably people that look at the health and safety and have that as a top priority of, when can we get the vaccination out there? When can we get people, that are going to socially distant and follow the rules? And, I feel bad because the world's going to look different. Live events are going to look different. They're going to feel different, and they're going to, cost a different amount of money. It's going to cost more to put on the same style of event than it did previously. And I think that's the reality of it. But I can't wait to get back to live events myself. I really do miss that part of the business.
William, before you chime in, I want to say one other thing from this article. It said 17% of those surveyed, only 17%, have actually been to an event. And only 40% of those surveyed have hosted an esports event. So is this a bit of a hidden variable here, or is there truly massive pent-up demand, right? That means of all the people they talk to, a very small number have been to an esports event, but many, the large majority, want to.
I'm sure pent-up demand is part of it, right? Like there's a lot of pent-up demand in the economy right now. You can't, that's the definition of, is that endogenous or exogenous factor? What do I want to say? Like, I don't know. It's one of those factors that starts with an A. It's like, it's in there. But like the bigger thing is, I put like the live events market is a little bit like the mobile gaming market, in that until you actually get into it, you don't realize how huge it is, right? It's one of those things where like people outside of it are like, oh no, there's no way mobile games. I'm guilty of that. I'm like, there's no way mobile game. Honor of Kings, no way that does anywhere near like 1.5 billion, really? In 2016? What's it doing now? Like live events is the same thing. It's one of those things where, because most people's first game experience is online or digital or connecting over the internet, they don't associate live events as, but anyone who's done it, anyone who's been there, and think about it intuitively, don't you want to meet up with your gaming buddies for a Coke or a beer? Wouldn't you like to high five the people you're playing with? Like once you've done it, you're hooked. Like really, like once you're done it, you've hooked. And so this is a huge trend coming out of, I think, the moment we're in as society today is going to be, I think this has been a bad time for gaming in many ways. It's been a good time in terms of gaming adoption and gaming lifestyle. And I think gaming as a third place will be a major story of 2021 and beyond. Provided, as Neil said, it is done safely. That is the most important thing. It is, he's right. It's going to look a little different coming out of this. It will cost a little more. It'll be a different, revenue model around it in terms of, there'll be some higher fixed costs and things, but it will be critical to the growth of the industry going forward.
Guys, let's wrap up this podcast. I will just shout out to the 21% who are not interested in hosting competitive gaming but have event venues, to maybe reconsider, because you don't want to go out of business, and people are willing to give you money to host events at your venue. I don't see why not. Neil, thank you for being on the show. How can people find you? Where can people find you? How can they reach out to you if you want to be reached?
I'm always happy for people to reach out. You can find me on Twitter. It's just at Neil Duffy. Reach out anytime. I'll respond to almost every DM. And I just can't wait to get back in the live event circuit, the conference circuit. I can see you guys. I actually met Paul for the first time at a haphazard conference in New York, but it was great. The best thing to come out of that was me meeting you. So I look forward to seeing both you guys in public in the near future.
You got to come check out the new studio.
Yeah.
Hey, where is it?
In Manhattan.
I will
but
be there.
state of the art.
So
Actually,
nice.
it's actually pretty incredible, and I can't wait for everyone to see it because when we start producing content out of there, everyone's going to see a big upgrade, which is fun. But Neil, thank you so much for being on as always. You're
And
obviously
Neil,
one of our favorite guests.
I think we feel the same way. Lucky to have connected. We're huge fans. So.
And William, you're great. I've got your book at home. I'm still waiting for that autographed copy. So next time I see you,
come when you're in the offices in Manhattan. We'll go out to drinks again, and I'll sign a dozen of them for you.
He's gonna make you buy another copy, Neil. Knowing you.
Listen, coming out of this, I will commit to buying a dozen copies if you sign them, and I'll also commit that I will go home tonight and I'll make my purchase. I love you both, so I'm going to buy each one of your T-shirts.
Oh no! Come on,
Neil.
I think it's been a spirited debate. Usually Paul's more of a dissenter, but I think he was pretty even keel tonight, and I love that. And William,
I was trying to win the vote here, and then
now
oh well, not much.
I'll tell you what, Paul. Throw this up and let's do a little contest. I'll buy a Christmas gift for one of your fans, specifically your fans, if they comment on this post on
cool,
and you ship it out.
We'll do that. I love it. Thank you.
Done.
That's actually such a good idea, and I appreciate it. And then we'll do that. So for those of you who are listening, wherever you saw this, when you see it go up, make sure you comment, and we will do a giveaway courtesy of Neil. So go follow Neil on Twitter at Neil Duffy. I'm sure people can find you on LinkedIn too, right? It's pretty easy.
LinkedIn's a great platform for me too. LinkedIn, just search Neil Duffy. You'll see it. Nice and easy.
And go check out if you're listening, and I know we have a lot of people listening in the education space, go check out Collegiate Star League if you have not already. That's the partner you want to be in business with if you're looking at that space. Guys, thank you as always for our listeners. Tune in every week. Wednesday evening, we do a live stream, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. We do it after we tape the show, the podcast. Our podcast, as always, drops on Thursday. Stay tuned for that. Don't forget to leave the 5-star ratings and reviews. We really appreciate it. Tell your friends about the podcast. Neil, William, thank you. For our listeners, thank you guys, and we will see you next week.